This is the Heroes Podcast. I'm back again with someone from North America. Misha, how are you? You're on mute.
Yeah, I was. Well, you know what? I am amazing. And one of the reasons I'm amazing, Andre, is I am, like you said, North America, but I'm in California, Encinitas. I'm right by the Pacific Ocean. Like I'm looking over my computer screen and I can see the ocean. And the reason I had my microphone muted was because there's a famous train that goes by the 101. It's the Highway 101, and a train goes by. So I was just muting as the train whistle was blowing. So it just reminds me how close I am to the ocean. So are you kidding me?
Yes, I was wondering, because when you said that, that's cheating. Like I just moved back from Sydney, Australia to landlocked Hungary. So don't tell me about the beaches. Don't tell me about the oceans because it's hurting me. But before we go in, I really wanted to intro you so everyone knows listening to us who is on stage today. So Misha is a seasoned sales expert who once retired to teach yoga and be a stay-at-home dad. How good is that? Now, as the founder of the Influence Army and host of the Table Rush talk show, he helps heart-centered entrepreneurs amplify the message and build influence without costly advertising. We love that. Are you ready to go on an influence tour? Thanks for coming on stage. Misha, do you want to take us back to maybe the beginning before you were not an influence assistant, when you were not sort of teaching others? Tell us, have you had troubles, struggles with self-worth, self-confidence that might just fit to this stage?
Yeah. That is such a fabulous question, Andre. And I'll start here. A lot of people see me and they go, "Oh my gosh, you're charismatic," or "You have this energy," or "You're so positive," and it's easy for me to get on the mic and things like that. And it's not always the case, right? It wasn't always the case. I wasn't always just, I can't wait to be here. I can't wait to serve. I've had some down some downstrokes of life for sure. And I think we would go back to the beginning of the intro where it talks about me retiring and teaching yoga to be a stay-at-home dad. And I had this is a good 12 years ago by now. I was very successful in the home loan industry. I'd been in sales for 20 years. I'd been a home loan officer for 15 years. I'd done all kinds of sales, telemarketing. I'd build telemarketing teams to generate business. I'd done massive flyer campaigns to get the phones to ring. I'd had teams. I funded like $1.5 billion in home loans. And that's a lot of houses. That's a lot of people buying houses, right? And doing refinances and things like that. But what happened was, I'm really, I'll just be perfectly honest with you, Andre. Here's what happened. All of a sudden, my wife left me, right? And up until that point, for a good chunk of my life, all I'd really just been on this success path, right? Like having success, growing, doing great at sales, being committed, being a family man, supporting a family, and then overnight that vision was crushed. And all of a sudden I was divorced guy. And I was like, I'm divorced guy. I can't believe this. How the heck did that happen? And within rapid succession, my parents died within a couple weeks of each other. I went through more failed relationships. Next thing you know, career upheaval. And ironically, what was the biggest point of existential pain or the biggest midlife crisis pain for me, call it what you will, was that I actually had a little bit of money in the bank. I had a chunk of money in the bank. And it turned out having money in the bank wasn't filling that, what I like to call that God-sized hole. So that was actually the heaviest time of my life. was when I realized that money was not the answer.
And
And
how did you feel? What did you struggle with as far as emotions or thoughts? Because it might just be some people around listening that who are going through similar inner struggle, inner conflict.
yeah, so thoughts that I had were, well, one thing that happened was overnight going to work became incredibly painful. Literally everything that I was good at became incredibly psychically painful. So I would be thinking, oh no, I have to go and work again to do this stuff that I hate now all of a sudden. And why did that happen? Like, how does that happen? Uh, I was feeling a little depressed. I went to get some counseling because I've been a pull myself up from my bootstraps kind of a guy. And all of a sudden, I was having emotions that were very hard to deal with. I would wake up, you know, upset about past relationships, about the last failed relationship. I would wake up thinking about this woman that I loved, right? And that relationship was done. And then I would think about her throughout the day and I would think about her before I was going to bed. And even though I knew it was done and I knew it wasn't meant to be, and I knew it was better that it was over, my brain was still stuck in that loop. And it was so interesting. And I was also committed, and I'm still committed to not taking industrialized medication, like getting involved in the pharmaceutical machine, the pharmaceutical industrial complex. So I went to get a little bit of counseling. And this counselor, I'll never forget it. She said, hey, you're probably a little bit depressed. You have some clinical depression, low grade clinical depression. And I had never felt like that before. And I actually, well, let me finish the story. And she said, hey, we can get through this. We'll do some work and we can do this without medication. And I was like, fantastic. Right. But I specifically remember going, I see why people kill themselves because my brain is in a loop and I'm sad and it keeps going places and I didn't want to, but I was gifted with compassion or empathy or call it what you will for people who are maybe one more step mentally tormented for a little bit. And I was like, "Oh my gosh." And I distinctly remember thinking I could die feeling this way and I didn't like it. I was like, there's a great chance I could die feeling this way. And I had a friend, and I'm sorry I'm going on this rant, but if it's okay, I'll keep going. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, I had a friend who said, he would say, you know how long it takes to get over a relationship if you have counseling? And he'd say, a year. And then he'd say, you know how long it takes to get over a relationship if you don't have counseling? About a year. And it was so funny when he would say that. But I hit that year point and I was in my mid 40s, and it was clear that I had years to go until I was going to get through this time. And it was a very sobering moment. Right? I was like, man, I'm a year in, and I was hoping to be free, and it was clear it wasn't happening. And anyway, I really dove deep into meditation. I really dove deep into to prayer. I jumped into satsangs heavy. Like I'd been into meditation my whole life, but this forced me to level up the meditation. It forced me to go closer to source, God, the universe, my creator, call it what you will. And I spent a lot of time crying. I spent a couple years crying every day. And I remember, I would say it like this. I'd spent, in my youth as a male, A type, suppressing more emotions than I was letting out. And then realizing somewhere along the way, hey, this isn't healthy. I need to start healthily letting out my emotions because, this anger, this edge, it's not serving me. So prayer, meditation, all these kinds of things, you know, quell the ego, shall we say. And so at that point, I'm letting out as many emotions as I'm taking in. But I still had a lifetime of bottled up emotions, pain from divorce, pain from, I had kind of a wild upbringing. I'm, there's no doubt in my mind that I had generational pain. My mother was from Germany. She grew up during World War II in Germany. Her father was killed on the Russian front. He was a captain in the army. She was on the losing side of the war, and horrible things happened to her after the war, like things that boggle the mind. Excuse me. And I have no doubt that if you believe this kind of stuff, genetically or in your genes or whatever, some of that stuff was floating around in me, right? So generational pain. So it felt like I was purging this generational pain. But anyway, as soon as went through that divorce, parents died, another failed relationship, it's like it pulled the cork out of the bottle or the top off the bottle and the emotions started coming out. And yeah, I needed to learn how to deal with it healthily. And so anyway, meditation, prayer. I jumped into met this guy named Kyle Cease. Anybody can Google him. Amazing Kyle Cease. He's got some programs out there. Oh, he's just such an amazing man. But I dove in deep with Kyle Cease. He became, call it a spiritual mentor for me for a while. And so I'm going through all this. I hate my job. And am I answering your question? Did I answer your question? Hopefully. Okay,
Keep
good.
going.
Okay, good, Andre. Good, good, good. Uh, so so I'm in this state and overnight my job is not serving anymore. I've most of my life I've been trying to serve the world, my community, what have you. And I was able to do that for a long time in sales and as in a home loan officer, but like I said, overnight it shifted and so I was like, God, give me my next career. I just was praying, God, universe, give me my next career. And I'm a divorced dad, and at this point, I'm really enjoying making my kids lunches for school. I'm really enjoying taking them to swimming lessons after. I'm really enjoying reading in their classes, things like that. So they're late, early tweenish. They were in seventh, ninth grade, something like that, somewhere in that area. And so for 2 years, it was very evident that I needed to leave the mortgage industry, but I had so much tied of my identity was tied in being successful, making money, building my retirement, upgrading the house, whatever these things are, right? And as I said, all of a sudden I don't admit this often, but I had a couple $1 million in the bank and I was emotionally and spiritually, hitting bottom. And I was like, it's not the answer. This sucks. And anyway, so I do this thing with Kyle Cease, and I'm in my job 2 years too long. I'm still in the mortgage business. Should have quit a couple years before, but I'm doing I do this program with Kyle. And basically, he has you inventory 100 things and that could be the sun rises in the east and sets in the west. I know that you just inventory 100 things and the first 20 are easy. It's the next 80 that are hard where you have to dig deep. So 100 things 100 things you love, 100 things you understand, and 100 things you're good at. Okay. So I do this and I go, oh my gosh, I love that early morning cup of coffee, right? Oh my gosh, I love getting my kids to school. Keep in mind, I'm a single dad at this point. Oh my gosh, I just is so powerful to read to these kids in school, like read Charlie and the Chocolate Factory or whatever, and these sorts of things. And so after you do this inventory of the things you know, like, love, and are good at, you put a star next to, you take a moment and you do a quick little, does this make me feel good or does this make me light or dark, light or dark? And then you dot everything that makes you feel light. And so a huge amount of things that I was good at, I've quickly realized those don't fill me up or make me light, like playing with spreadsheets at the time or whatever it was. And I just had this moment of clarity of, oh my gosh, I need to retire and be a stay-at-home dad. And it
That's
just,
powerful.
huh?
It's very powerful. I happen to be the lucky guy. This is why your story resonates so much. Who, who people come to see at the bottom of that emotional hole. Because I can rapidly change that the
Oh, no.
trouble or the pain or the lack of loss themselves into, well, redirect their attention to what they can do, what is possible, and how they could turn their life to, you know, to a more empowering direction. And why it really resonates, because I, from my name you might be able to see, I'm half German, if not even more. So my family was split up through the two sides of the Iron Curtain. So some of my family ended up in Hungary and some are still living in Germany. But we had these 40 years of total lockdown in communism. So what's happening next? Because now you've got yourself stay home dad. Probably you locked on. I love this. This is who I would want to be. This is where I can enjoy myself. Almost I've heard from you the Ikigai formula. What brought you the next stage of evolution, or how? Probably there's a few dads asking, like, if I could be with my son, how would I turn that into dollars? What happened?
Great question. So I had to let go of, I had to start spending that money, that pile of money that I had been growing earlier than I anticipated. And all of a sudden, was in compare mode, comparing my pile with your imaginary pile. And now my pile is going down and yours is probably going up. And I hate to even admit that, but that's the reality of the time of where I was, right? And I just was like, oh my gosh, I have I have been blessed with these resources. It is time for me to use those resources to help my kids get through school and be there for them and hold space for them. And that became my job. And teaching yoga. Teaching yoga was amazing. And I was basically a substitute yoga teacher. What's so powerful about being a yoga teacher is that, at least in Encinitas, California, it's like the hub of yoga and the, self-realization and all this stuff, is that there's tons of classes to be taught, but there's teachers that need substitute teachers. So I was able to teach as much as I wanted whenever I wanted, so I could teach at time appropriate where it wouldn't impede on time with my boys. But here's literally my job was to hold space for my boys. And my youngest, who is actually turns 21 today as we record this, uh, he would open the door to his bedroom, look out, see me in the living room, and you could see him feel safe and close the door. Like literally my job was just to be there. And so anything that I did that would impede on my ability to be there and hold space for my two boys, my other one's Cooper, the universe or God, or say it however you want, made it very painful. So, so anyway, I'll cut to the chase. So midway through this, I start meeting people and my entrepreneurial juices start flowing again. And I intuitively know that at some point my kids will be out of the house and I'll get to re engage in the entrepreneurial game, sales, which I love. I love sales, marketing, entrepreneuring. I just love it. And it's a part of me. And so I intuitively knew, hey, I'm going to get to reemerge again, but you just got to be patient. So Cooper, my older one, graduates from high school, moves out of the house. Waylon, my younger one, by the time he's a senior in high school, I'm really getting inspired to get back in the game. And I don't know if you know who Russell Brunson is, but Russell Brunson is like one of the master online marketers. And I end up in his funnels and I'll never forget it. I said, "Hey, Waylon, I want to join Russell Brunson's what's called 2CCX. It's his $25,000 a year coaching program. I'm all in on the new school of online marketing, and I want to learn it, know it, love it." This is a few years ago, right? And but I said, Waylon, I need your sign off because it's going to take some time, and it'll be less time for me to spend with you. And he looks at me and he goes, first, he goes, $25,000. Are you insane? And a year, right? And uh, anyway, and I just to let you know, I was in it for 3 years and it was incredible. I have so many stories around it. But Waylon goes, "Hey, Dad, I've got my job, got my girlfriend. I'm a senior. You know, I know what I'm doing for college. Like, you're fine. You're good. Go for it." So I dive in to Russell Brunson's coaching program. And immediately he's like, start a podcast. So I started what's called the Table Rush Talk Show, which you mentioned earlier in my bio. Started interviewing people and playing the online marketing game or doing that. And I want to give you a chance to ask a question because I know I've been talking a bunch.
No, perfect. You're all
Oh,
good. What happened through your your breakthrough was finally finishing close fatherhood? That would you say was the step out towards back into business again? What would you say? Yeah.
yeah, absolutely. Yep. And I was at a Funnel Hiking Live. This is a few years ago. Tony Robbins was the keynote speaker. Tony Robbins is amazing. Tony's doing his thing and he has groups of three of us. This is right towards the end of it. He's been going for 2 or 3 hours and we are all just in it, wide open, energized. And he has the three of us, do this exercise. And I can't even remember what the exercise was, but I got to speak first to the two guys. It doesn't really matter. But when it came my time to share with them my 3 minute thing, I was literally just sobbing and it was more of tears of joy, but sobbing, this energy, this emotional release. And it was clear. And the message was, you were a good dad. You did your job. No regrets. Like you showed up in a big way at the end. And I just got the chills talking about it. And the two guys who were there, what are their names? Rick and James, both of them. I mean, they were like, "What just happened?" Right? But that was a moment of I would call it forgiveness to myself. I don't need to have any guilt about it, right? I showed up for my boys. I was there. I did it. I was a good dad. I created the foundation for them. I think, does that answer your question?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, and I'm teaching this, so it again is a very powerful insight. I believe in the more emotional free one is, there's greater space to create, let's say, faster breakthroughs and transformations in pretty much each area of life. So I do help people to get it without, going through too much trouble and probably 20 years of suffering, which I did. And I love to shorten the journey to maybe a few months. And I have amazing tools. But what else do you think has been a contributing factor to moving on to the next stage of your life. And if you want to just expand on what are you doing and how you've turned this into contribution and a new way of life.
Yeah, absolutely. Great question, Andre. So another thing that happened, and I'm looking for a piece of literature. I thought I had brought it into my studio here, but I didn't. But I got clean and sober when I was 17 years old. I was already a pretty progressed alcoholic and drug addict, and I was doing little stints in jail, and I was really in the death spiral. If you, I'll just cut to the chase. So I had graduated from Judge Horn. In America, there's judges. Oh, there's Apple giving us thumbs up. But in America, there's judges, and they sentence you to probation, and then they sentence you to jail. And so Judge Horn was the first judge, and he kept on saying, 1 year probation, 2 year probation, 3 year probation. I graduated at judge rank, and my last day of high school, Judge Rank said, "Look, you can go to jail for 6 months, or you can go to treatment." And for whatever reason, I saw that life of alcohol and drugs unfolding, a lifetime of that unfolding in front of me. And I was inspired for the sober path, right? And I've been straight line sober ever since. So I look at life through that lens, that 12-step lens, the recovery modality. And part of that is one is you got to crush your ego. You got to crush your ego. And so, you got to find some sort of higher power or something that you can start turning to. You got to clean house, start learning how to take accountability, trust in God, clean house, work with others. And so the service part of it, service. And in this literature, it basically says, it's like page 102. I wish I had it, but page 102. In effect, it says, as long as you're in fit spiritual condition and you have an attitude of service, you can go anywhere and do anything. And right. And so that has been a deep foundational tool for me. So I was for my almost my whole life, I've been praying, how can I be of service? What can I bring to the table? How can I be of service? What can I bring to the table? Sometimes I get answers I don't want. The universe was like, you need to retire and be a stay-at-home dad. But I'm like, I like being a kick-ass business guy, right? And the universe is like, well, okay, you can keep suffering over there, or you can retire and get your kids through high school. So anyway, how can I be of service? How can I be of service? And I'm deep in Russell Brunson's 2CCX. I'm going to all these networking events. I have a lifetime of sales and networking skills, like listening to Zig Ziglar and Brian Tracy and learning how to sell and how to bring positive energy. And I love Zig Ziglar because he's very much about service, and a lot of these guys are. But anyway, I'm trying to cut to the chase here. I start going to all these networking events. I'm on all these Zoom calls, these hot seats, flying around to masterminds. I've started my podcast. I did some online summits where I was interviewing a lot of people. So I'm talking to entrepreneur after entrepreneur after entrepreneur. And it becomes very clear very quick that a huge amount of entrepreneurs are horrible at telling their own story. And a huge amount of us entrepreneurs are horrible at telling our customer stories. So we're horrible at telling the transformation we can create for somebody with our product, our service, our coaching, whatever, through the eyes of our customer. Right? Would you concur with that?
Well, I do believe that the way to tell a story when it comes to business owners is pretty much about building such a deep connection that people wouldn't even think about hiring you or taking your products and services. So I think this is the most important pillar to the business. If anything is more important, maybe a product is.
Yeah.
But
So
if one has a product that serves that transformation, I call it from A to B, and you have a story of that transformation behind you, you become unstoppable. That's what I believe.
a great way to sum it up. So what happens is I'm good on the mic. I'm good at interviewing people. I'm inquisitive. Through my home loan experience, I've talked to thousands of people, and my customers, my avatar at the time, as I was in home loans, was CEOs, chief executive officers, GMs, general managers, CIOs, VPs, entrepreneurs. That was my, that's who I targeted that's who I wanted to serve in the home loan business. And when you're doing a home loan for somebody, you're in effect interviewing them. You have to know, what's their income? So what's their job history? What's their residence history? What's their asset base? What's their credit? You're asking all these questions and you're digging deep. And me personally, I am always fascinated by what people do. Still am to this day. So I loved home mortgages because I got to talk to people. I was like, what do you do? How'd you get there? You make what? What? I was constantly just blown away. And so I brought all this to fast forward to people start paying me as I'm doing all this stuff with Russell Brunson to get their customer testimonials. So I'm getting paid to fly around the world, fly around the country to interview customers and people's customers to get their stories. And it was very interesting because you asked, I had some serious imposter syndrome too. And this wasn't that long ago. This is about a year ago, 2 years ago. I'm in this space. I'm adding value, but I don't know it. I'm massive imposter syndrome. And two things happened. One of my customers, Stacy Oliver, who she would fly me around to these parties that she would throw, and I'd interview like 10 of her customers and prospects at the same time. And it was so much fun. But I wake up to an email from her saying, Mischa, you're the one who moves the needle in my business. I pay all these other people. You're the one that's driving the revenue. And all of a sudden I was like, oh my God, like I am adding value. I am being of service. So it was so empowered. At the exact same time, Ryan Lipsey, who has a show, it's called the Small Business Spotlight, he had been harassing me and saying, hey, Mischa, you got to talk to my real estate agents. He has a massive real estate agent following. He's like, you got to teach my realtors how to get video testimonials, how to repurpose that into micro content. Like they're starving for it. Please jump on my show and teach to them. And I kept blowing it off. And so I wake up to the email from Stacy saying, you're moving the needle in my business. For whatever reason, I coincidentally said to Ryan, finally, I'll speak on your show. So he interviews me and I crush it. I talk about my perfect video testimonial system, my 5-step system for getting your customers to gladly do your selling for you. And I was like, oh my gosh, my imposter syndrome just got ripped away. I was like, oh my gosh, I have something of value and I know how to get the message out. I've got to go on a podcast tour. Fast forward, I do this crazy post on Instagram. I'm going to go on a podcast tour. I'm going to bring all my skill set from my sales days of creating tracking sheets, scripting, what to say, when to say it, how to find emails. Who would want those assets? Who would want to know how to do that? And I got this flood of engagement from people saying, I would, I would, I would. And it was like I got this lightning bolt. I was like, lightning bolt. It was like, oh my gosh, like I could help heart-centered entrepreneurs go on an influence tour, which starts by guest speaking on podcasts. So to sort of close the loop on all that, what I do today is I literally teach people how to guest speak on podcasts. So not only what to say and when to say it, but how to find the podcasts, how to find the emails, how to send the emails, all of it, how to get your call to actions dialed in, your bios, everything.
So would you say you are the expert to put people in front of the audience that's relevant, the audience they need to then create turnover sales? Would you, is that it?
Yeah, absolutely. So I help heart-centered entrepreneurs bring your message to market in a big way so you
Mm.
can increase your influence, your impact, and your income. So you're speaking on podcasts, you're speaking to a captive audience, and a slice of that audience is absolutely wants to hear what you have to say. And then I teach how to tell the stories at the right time, which ones, right, which is actually pretty easy, it turns out, with some exercises. I have my story bank, get your stories together worksheet so you can tell the right stories at the right time to inspire your audience to take action, right? That's really what we want to do. Um, so we can serve at a high level. I think I distracted myself, but yeah. So yeah, I mean, Stacy joined my influence army. Stacy, that customer who was flying me around getting her customer testimonials. She's like, I need to get on more podcasts. I need to join your community. And she jumped in and started getting, $5,000 selling, 5,000 doo-doo talking to people selling her $5,000 packages or $10,000 packages. Carissa did my frameworks, does my stuff. Next thing you know, she's speaking on a virtual stage. That's what we're doing right now. I'm on a virtual stage, right? And she's got her audience dialed in. She's got her stories dialed in a little better too. None of this needs to be perfect. We just need to have it a little better and progressing forward. She speaks to her avatar, and this person goes, "Oh my gosh, like I I hear you, and here's a $30,000 package," right? Like these are the things that happen. And Payman, who brought us together, Payman Lorenzo. So there's
Mm.
so many benefits of guest speaking on podcasts. There's literally, you can tell somebody to go to your call to action. So anybody right now who's made it this far and is like, oh my gosh, Mischa, I love what you're talking about. I want to go on a podcast tour. I want to get my message out there. I want to increase my impact, my influence, my income. How do I find you? Well, go to badzuck.com. You can go to badzuck.com right now and join. So badzuck.com and join. That's a call to action, right? So we can get that dialed in. So an audience will literally go to your call to action, or you can network with the host. So Andre, you might literally go, Mischa, I need to go on a podcast tour. You help me, right? So sometimes the host will utilize your services. Sometimes you might even go, oh my gosh, Mischa, there's a couple people that I coach that I'm helping them, that I've helped them have that breakthrough. I've shortened their pain gap, right? You're helping them speed up their transformation. You're like, hey, they're ready to go on an influence tour. Would you help them? Let me refer you to them so you can get referrals. Uh, there's six main things. Hold on one second. I want to make sure I cover them all. Collaboration opportunities. Payman and I collaborated. I spoke on Payman's show. Next thing you know, I spoke on his 5-day podcast leads challenge. You met me through that. Now, so him and I collaborated through a different podcast that I spoke on that we got introduced. So it creates these collaboration opportunities and the branding. Obviously, I'm getting to tell my stories. People get to go, oh, I love Mischa's message, or I hate it. That's fine either way. But there is going to be a certain amount of people that go, oh, Mischa's brand, I like it. Right. And then there's the whole transformation aspect of it. But go ahead. It looks like you wanted to say something.
No, it's very insightful, and I realized while you were telling us, and guys, listen and take a notepad and a pen, because this is it. You could get in front of the right audience, and this is, I realized that we do have a perfect match, because I accelerate, releasing those generational traumas and whatever is the unworthy patterns of, depression, but whatever is messing up their head. But then I believe the second stage of transformation is when they finally arrive to emotional freedom. And when they arrive to emotional freedom, there is now usually the next thing is mission or setting up themselves for a life on their terms. But it doesn't just happen, it requires a specialist who has tools and strategies that are state of the art, and they do work and they are proving to be bringing results. So I already see that how we could, help people to go through the whole journey from pain, trauma, all, of course, with commitment, and that always needed, and a decision. But it will probably just flow them through up to a charged life. And I believe
Yes.
that's what it's about, because very few people get to live up to their potential, or even looking mission or how I could serve. Very few. I guess it's 5-10% probably on this planet, no more. And
Yeah.
I want to increase that number. Why not? So what have I not asked you, Mischa, that you would have wanted to share, but with not having the right questions, or have not? What is it? Tell us more. What is the golden nugget?
Yeah, it's so great. I I was just editing some video clips and I was going on this rant about test, try, learn, and do. Test, try, learn, and do. And I had this mentor. I'm in his program, Stu McLaren, and he talks about getting rid of the gremlins in your head. And I think if some of us are sensitive, I tend to be very sensitive, empathic, you could call it, or egotistical, whatever, empathic, subject to subject to taking on more emotions than perhaps are necessary. It's funny to say that, but I can take everything as mission critical when it's not. And so I would encourage anybody who's listening, start telling your story, start talking about what you do, start putting yourself out there and test and try and learn and do. Test, try, learn, and do. That's really all we're doing. If you can think about that and detach, let go of the attachment of the outcome, because really we're just learning on how to be more effective next iteration, learning how to be more effective next iteration. So if we can detach, test, try, learn, do, have fun, I just, that's top of my head. So I would encourage anybody. Yeah.
That really is coming from my heart. And I hear, well, you guys, what if you were looking at business as a journey to learn and having fun, and then allow it to unfold? Uh, it was a wonderful conversation, Mischa. Um, Last question: what would you be celebrating in 5 years' time if things went really well for you?
I love that question. It's interesting because on one side of me, I try to be I'm almost anti-goal because I was so goal driven and so goal oriented for so long. And I'm not saying goals are bad. Goals can definitely serve us, but on one hand, I'm like, no more goals. But on the other hand, I do like to visualize now and then that future me. And what is the dream, that 5-year dream? And I have this amazing piece of property here in Encinitas, California, fairly close to the ocean. So I literally get to walk on the ocean 5 days a week. And I'm doing yoga the other days. So that's why I'm not out there every day. Um, but I have this great property. And when I bought it, I'm in a 900 square foot house. Great property, ocean views, tiny little house. It's more than enough. But I love the idea of the family compound, of having a space where my boys could hang out, or there's the in-law or the second house on it, and it's just building a compound for family and community. So in 5 years, that's what I see. And maybe it's not family, maybe it's people like you that are hanging out on this compound that I built, and we're doing yoga and prayer and meditation or whatever. Satsangs, or my boys are here with their families. So that's how I would answer that.
Misha, thanks very much. How parallel our lives are. I'm always so surprised. I'm actually in Wednesday this week. We're looking to sign a contract to an exact type of property that you're telling me about, where there is space for outside to really invite plenty of people. It's a country home, and that is our next stage in life, growing our own food. And I don't know how you have come up with this, but it's going to happen for you as you want it. I really enjoyed having you here, and I hope we'll collaborate even more, because I see that people need to keep together, inspire more people so they can unlock their own potential and take it to that level where, and this really caught me when you said, well, don't want to look at goals, because I think, and I want you to expand on this as a last question, that I think when you realize how to create value, then you do not ever really need to look at bank accounts and money, because all you need to be is just be you. Keep playing, and everything is taken care of, everything is provided. How would you, what's your take on this?
Yeah, goals can be limiting. It ends up being limiting. If I'm in the moment and in God's creation, that's how I like to think about it. It's like, what is God got in front of me to do today? And sometimes if I'm too goal oriented, I'm missing beauty, opportunity, people, places, things, inspiration. Right? I'm almost limiting how big things can be. The connection. I try not to think in terms of shiny objects anymore either, like bank accounts or all of that stuff, because I know to my core it's all fleeting. Right? I had $2 million in the bank and I was brought to my knees. I was
Mm,
devastated emotionally. Right. So I know that 10 million is not going to make it any better. I'm not saying I wouldn't be happy if I had 10 mil or 100 mil or whatever, but having that be the objective, or that's all fleeting, matters not. Anyway, we could keep going down that rabbit hole. Money's fun to play with, so I don't want to. I'm not trying to apply good or bad to it, but what do people say that you know money amplifies your character? If you're a prick, excuse me, and you end up with a lot of money, your prickness is going to be amplified, right? If you're got a massive heart and you're a giver and just here to serve, and you're gifted with resources, and you're just going to use those to serve. And that, ultimately, that's what it's all about. And I'll say this too, that a smile can be the most powerful way to serve. It can be as simple as a smile. I can make it really hard when it's like, you know what, just go out to the day and smile at people and be the ripple, you know?
that's beautiful. Well, thanks very much, Misha. I loved having you here, and we'll talk soon again, and probably we'll talk more about, yes, next stage of entrepreneurship and how to unlock living an inspired life. Thanks very much again. I loved it.
Thank you, Andre.